Howdy everyone, Greg Martin, the Entrepreneur's Banker here, and on this episode of Selling Your Business 360, a full circle view of your exit, we are talking with one of my favorite entrepreneurs. Stephen Sutton is the definition. When I think of an entrepreneur, he's the definition of an entrepreneur. One, he's a serial entrepreneur. He has owned and formed and exited multiple businesses in his career. Two, he is constantly looking to improve himself, whether that be through education or being around other entrepreneurs. He's a member of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and he's also a firm believer in profit first. So we've got that shared relationship. But what's really interesting about Stephen is that he just recently, within the last 60 days of when we recorded this, Stephen just exited his business. And he sold his business, or he sold his part of the business, to an existing partner who was already working with him for multiple years. So this is fresh on Stephen's mind and a really unique perspective of how his exit took place with a partner. I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did talking with Stephen. If you're not connected with either Stephen or I hope that you do so immediately. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Enjoy. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for joining us today. I think that for us to be able to learn from your experience, and quite frankly, I mean, this is a very new development. I mean, very recently, as we're having this, Stephen, you've gone through the transition of selling your business very recently. Yes. And so this is definitely fresh on your mind. And just tell us a little bit about, how you started the company, and then how you kind of made the decision just recently to exit to a partner, someone that you've been working with for years.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me on your show here.
Definitely.
And as far as how I started my business, almost 20 years ago as a way to feed the family. I know
that's kind of a good motivation.
And it was the primary motivation was it was soon after internet bubble burst and the 9/11 happened, and there were a lot of people unemployed at the time where I was living, and I needed to find a way to feed the family because I wasn't getting enough interviews or any job offers. So I know it sounds weird as that being the way to try to
that was your gateway drug in entrepreneurship.
Yes, because most people try to ease into it, I think, but no, I just kind of jumped out there, and we had 2 kids in diapers at the time when we started this, and it was quite the adventure at the beginning, and I grew it up, changed quite a bit. And then recently, 6 years ago, brought on a partner and started transitioning out of the day-to-day of my business.
Okay.
And then even more recently, at the beginning of this year, decided that it was time for me to move on to whatever's next. And that's
selling. So 4 or 5 years ago, you had an employee that was working with you that you said, hey, this is someone that I can partner with, and did some type of equity transaction at that point. And
right.
and then now you're saying, okay, I'm ready for the next phase in life. Take the rest of my equity. I'll take some cash. Goodbye. Good luck.
And that's pretty much what it was. It was that, my passions have changed. When I started this business, my passion was feeding the family first and foremost. And then the second one was always been revolved around IT and helping people use IT to its fullest. Starting in a time when people were just becoming to realize that IT was something that was here to stay. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people can't imagine this time that people thought computers were a fad. But that's at one point it was that mm-hmm. way, and then in business, when I started my business, it was starting to take hold, and now it's just commonplace. Everyone thinks of it as just it's a utility. It's a utility. You have to have it, and so therefore my passion changed in as far as the way trying to get the people to understand technology. I don't have to get them to understand technology. They understand the importance of it now. So my passion's changed more towards business strategy.
Gotcha.
In the last few years anyways. So that's one of the reasons I'm exiting.
And I know we kind of talked about how hard that can be as an entrepreneur that is day-to-day operating, to realize, hey, there's something else that I really am passionate about, and emotionally coming to the decision of, okay, the best thing is for me is to step away from this company that I founded 20 years ago. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
And we read lots about you have to know your why you're doing something. And there are a lot of people that think that why never changes, but honestly it does. Life changes, your life responsibilities change. When I started this, like I said, my two oldest children were in diapers. Now they're both in college. Mm-hmm. So and then I have one other child still in high school now, but my priorities are different. Mm-hmm. And of when I started this business to what they are now, and my responsibilities are different. And so making a change in what my passion is and my why is seems appropriate.
So did you think way back when, 4 or 5, 6 years ago, whenever you brought on your partner, did you think back then, hey, this is going to be part of my exit strategy?
Honestly, I thought that here's a young, ambitious guy that's going to take a huge load off of my shoulders. Extremely intelligent guy, much smarter than me. He can handle.
He's one of the smartest guys I know.
Yes, absolutely.
Hands down.
Yes, and so I saw it first as a way to lighten the load, and then as time went by and he started taking more and more responsibility in the company, I did start seeing it as a way for me to get out of the day-to-day and spend more time on other things that I wanted to do. It wasn't when I brought him on the idea, though, that I was going to sell out to him. The idea was originally that together we would sell this business at some point in the future.
Gotcha.
And that was my plan for it, at least at the time, is that we build it up and then we'd sell it at a later point.
So like entrepreneurship, you have a plan and then life happens.
Life happens.
And you have to adjust, but you say, okay, how can this still continue to be the best thing for me and for my family going forward?
And for the business itself. Mm-hmm. Because and part of my looking at it is my passion had started to dwindle. Am I actually bringing a lot to the table in this company, and how much better will the company do if I did exit? So because this is, a lot of people talk about it as another one of their children.
Right.
I want it to be successful.
Yeah.
Even after I leave, and if it can be more successful without me, and I can exit appropriately. Yes. Then it's worth for me to
be able to pursue that.
Pursue the next thing. Yes.
So it's really interesting, this type of transition, because in some ways you have heard the expression multiple bites of the apple. So you sold some equity at some point in time, and now you're coming back and sold the rest of the equity. So let me ask you, how did you value the business? Was it the same basic methodology at both of those times, or because you had grown so much, was there a different type of valuation that you did?
So the first valuation was based off of a buy-sell insurance that we got for my partner and I, and it was completely based off of EBITDA. Which is what the insurance company works off of. That's the only thing they work on.
Just a multiple of EBITDA, no add backs, no nothing.
Not even a multiple. Just
straight up.
Straight up.
Okay.
Yes, it was an awful way to do it. It was not the way anyone should do it.
So as a seller, you're probably like, that sucked.
Looking back on it, it was not the best move, but the plan was, at that time, that we'll bring on a partner and then eventually we'll sell it, and it wouldn't make that big of a difference to me. I didn't put a lot of thought into the valuation when I brought on the first partner. And I would say if I would go back and look at it again, I would have spent more time and really gotten someone involved like we did the second time around.
So you had an appraisal, a formal appraisal, or a broker or somebody?
We had someone that's involved in mergers and acquisitions for IT companies.
Okay.
That's what they specialize in. We had a company come in, look at our company, and appraise us based on what the market value is if we were to take it out and sell it to a competitor or to a private equity firm. And then it was balanced between a percentage of that, a balance based on our EBITDA cash value, and what it would be if, in comparison, if we were on the stock market. There's like, I mean, it's a lot of different valuations were done, and then it's blended by percentage wise. Well, obviously our company isn't a stock market size company, so that one was that valuation was only
a small weight.
It was a small weight, but it's weighted based on the I think it was 3 or 4 different types of valuations, and then we weighted each one. My partner and I agreed to the weighting, and then that finalized the last number. We looked at it. Will this work for you? And then we looked at what cash was sitting out there left in our accounts, and said, okay, this is what we think the value is, and we agreed upon it. So that's how we came to the
so that number. So for you personally, knowing that you were going to be exiting this business and that you're giving up that cash stream, you're giving up the stress of running the business, but you're also giving up that cash stream that comes with being an entrepreneur, with being able to have influence on what cash to pull out, stuff like that. You had to make a personal decision, you and your family, to say, is this going to be enough? And so for you personally, as you were going through the weighting, as you were going through that evaluation period, did you have a number that you're like, okay, this is what I need, before you got the appraisal? Say, I need this number, and I hope the appraisal comes in more than that.
There was a number. There was a number that I was like, if it comes below this, then I won't be able to do the things that I want to do next. And so one of the things that I want to do is and what one of my mentors has told me to do is to take a couple months and do nothing, or make no decision on what I'm going to do next, because in the past, before I started this business, including when I started this business, it's always been about, when I didn't have a job, it was about having a job next. and the first thing that popped up, it wasn't about having
that's a viable idea, do it.
Yes. If it would cover the bills, then we had to jump on it. And so this is the first time in life that I've ever been in this point where I have plenty of breathing room before I have to make a decision about what I'm doing next. This particular movement isn't one that I'm going to retire for life on, but I have plenty of time to pay all my bills and living expenses and take care of the family,
and focus on, because I know that we've talked a lot. You are, I think that the last couple of years have evolved your mind frame or your mindset. You're the type of entrepreneur that realizes that they're really good at starting something and growing, and that's the thrill for you. Yes. To pull something out of a blank piece of paper and to create something. Now I got an engine that's rolling. Yeah, not so much Stephen's bailiwick.
The day-to-day operation is definitely not as exciting to me.
Not saying that you can't do it. It's just that you're not jazzed. You're not working 21 hours a day to create a 0.5 percentile of efficiency in an operating business.
Right, and there are people that love doing that.
Yeah.
And my partner, John, is amazing at that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing at that type of stuff.
So let me ask you about the deal structure without getting into anything specific, dollars or anything like that, but how did you structure the first part of the transaction? Was it all cash? Was it a seller note? Was there bank debt involved? And then how did you structure the second part?
So
from your perspective.
So the first part was a seller note. I loaned my partner the money, and then on a payment plan, and he just made those payments, and boom, he had,
The equity.
This time, what's actually happening is that the company is buying my stock, leaving my partner with all the remaining stock. So we're getting a loan and working with the SBA to get a loan for that transaction.
So from your perspective, it's here's a lump of cash,
And I'm done.
goodbye, good luck,
Yes,
God
it's
bless.
a unique situation because I've been, in the history of my company, I've acquired 2 other smaller companies, and there was always a transition period where we kept on, the ownership and tried to keep some knowledge base. Well, there's nothing to transfer in my case because he's been running most of the company for the last 3 years, and been involved in the company for over 10. It's a unique situation where there's no worry about him not knowing that, customer.
Right.
And most of the customers, or all the customers, are used to working with him now, and so there's not any worry about losing customers.
Any type of transition. So so that's one of the obviously the benefits of selling or transitioning to a partner. Is that you've got some of that continuity. I think that sometimes some people might argue, talking with other entrepreneurs that have sold and entrepreneurs that have bought, who you sell to will determine how much they're willing to pay. And a strategic buyer that doesn't necessarily need you as the exiting partner. They're going to buy it, and they may actually be able to offer a higher premium because they're going to take your operations, bring it in, cut some overhead, and move on. But that's just really interesting that was a unique way of just dealing with partner transition.
Right.
So let me ask you this: you've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and have a lot of friends that have sold businesses. You're not in a position with this transaction that you're taking a seller note or something like that. That is potentially a risk to the entrepreneur that's exiting, taking a seller note back. As you were starting to talk with your partner about the buyout, was that even discussed, or were you like, I need to move on to my next stage in life, and that will not include that seller note?
I think we both knew that was just the way we were going to do the transaction from the beginning. And as long as it reached the threshold. When we did the appraisal, we saw that the threshold that I needed was going to be hit. We looked at first just doing a cash buyout, and had we needed something else, we might have looked further, but we never had to get to that point of the conversation. But yes, most of the people that I know have some type of performance buyout afterwards. And being in this unique position where I'm selling my equity back to the company, and John's been running the company, and he's been the face of the company to all the customers. The performance has been for the last several years and will continue to be all on him. So it's a unique position to be in. There's no reason to believe that me leaving is going to cost the company anything, which is very rare.
But as someone that if that had to happen, then you've got a high degree of confidence that he's got the ability to continue operations. And because that's one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs don't really think through. They think, okay, well, I've got to do a seller note in order to make this deal happen. But then 3 years into it, they start to maybe get a little antsy of, okay, they're not running the business the way I would run the business.
Right, and the way I've seen some of my friends handle that is that that performance works both ways. That if I give a seller note on this as opposed to just a buyout, performance buyout, then if I'm giving a seller note on a portion of it, then if you can't perform due to your lack of ability, then I can take back my equity.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that makes perfect sense, but that's something that we haven't really talked about with anyone up till now.
Yeah, I've seen that in especially when it's selling to the employees.
Okay.
And if it's sell out to the existing employee management, there's some type of clause that if you can't hit the performance and you can't hit this, and you can't make these payments, then I have the option to come back in and acquire that equity back, or get
a portion of the equity,
portion or all of it, or take over management again, if necessary.
Gotcha. You don't have to answer this if you want, but did you have to sign a non-compete?
Yes.
Did that bother you?
It didn't bother me. I mean, you shouldn't. I don't think you should expect to be able to sell a company and not have some sort of non-compete. I mean, if you can manage to do that, that's amazing. But especially in our industry, where it's about customer relationships and vendor relationships, it's got to be in geographical makes sense. I could always move.
It's got to make sense for both.
I can move off to another
all
state.
Of the United States. It's probably not a non-compete you can sign.
And unless I was selling a much larger company.
That's right. If there's enough zeros, then yes.
Absolutely. But yes, there is a non-compete in our purchase.
How did you tell your customers, your staff, that this transition was happening? I mean, it sounds like your customers all had your partner as the face of the company.
And in the case of the customers, my partner handled that because he was already the face of the company. There's, I would say, only about less than half of the customers at this point even knew what my face looked like at this point, because of, just changes that have happened, and I had been getting out of the business, and out of the day-to-day of the business. So most of them they'd been working with John, and other than knowing that I had been involved, there wasn't a major problem there. Employee-wise, we were a pretty open company, so it just came up in conversation that the transition was happening. There were some employees that just heard about it just because in random conversation, because we were very open and we weren't closed about it. So I don't know exactly how. I don't remember exactly how. It's not like we sat them all down and said, "Hey, we're doing this." It just, we were just never really closed.
John and Stephen are your boss. Soon, just John.
Like I said, it's just about being an open culture. We're small business, so these things just were happening in conversations.
Gotcha.
Around the employees.
And I mean, was there any angst or anything, or was it just okay, good for you?
I think that's the general consensus of it. I haven't heard any of the employees come back to me and say, "I can't believe you're doing this." Like I said, John's been running most of the day-to-day. John works with most of the employees directly, and because I've been stepped out, they were, if anything, they were happy to see, not happy, but they were like, well, nothing changes.
Accepting of, hey, this is, this is what it is.
Nothing really changes for us,
So knowing that this is a process that kind of every entrepreneur has to go through, and what I've seen is that there's two distinct ways of them looking. One is obviously the financial, making sure that their numbers are in line, making sure that the seller gets what they need in order to start doing whatever the next phase of life is. But the other one that's just as important, I'm finding out, I'm learning, is the emotions of it. Can you describe the emotional roller coaster of selling this second half or the second part of your baby?
So, for me, has been a transition for me of slowly getting to the point where I wasn't in the day-to-day anymore, mostly so that I could just work on the strategy of the company. And then it became, because I'd already done that part, I removed myself from the day-to-day of everything in the business, or not everything, but most of the business. And so my emotional attachment had already been kind of like eased out when you have a kid move out of the house. It eased into that, as opposed to just being, they're gone.
One day you're not responsible for that anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that part is much easier to see to go. I'm looking at it more of, it's left the house, he's grown up, the business is going to go on and do other great things, and I'm going to be very proud of where John takes us next. So on that side of the emotion, it's been fairly easy for me. The emotion and stress that my mentor warned me about, and he said, take the 2 months, I already see the stress he was talking about. Everyone I see when I talk to them is, what are you doing next? I've got the anxiety of, where's the next paycheck coming in, even though I don't need it.
Right.
And but that anxiety is there, and so that pressure and that pressure of having nothing to do. I spend my time, doing a lot of honeydews around the house right now. Yesterday was installing a garbage disposal. Today was putting in new ceiling fans, and last week was working on a truck, just to keep myself busy while I'm in this transition period of time. So that feeling of not having, there's a relief to it, and then there's immediate anxiety that follows it of, I can't just sit around and do nothing all day.
But I also know you enough that's part of what energizes you. The possibility of looking at finding an opportunity, finding a way for you particularly to leverage technology to make that opportunity better,
right, is
really cool. And then to be able to realize that you're going to take a blank piece of paper and you're going to pull something out of it that's got value, that hopefully potentially you'll sell again to somebody. You'll bring on another partner and yes, rinse and repeat.
And so there's already a lot of opportunities that are popping to mind, different business ideas, trying to find out what exactly is, what is it that I'm truly passionate about, and at what level do I want to do that on? Do I want to just keep it a local business, a regional sized business, statewide, or even global, national or global business? That decision has to be made first, and because that completely changes your lifestyle, and and what's going on with the family. Doing a local business when all the kids were young made a lot of sense, so I could be around.
Yeah.
Now I have opportunities to open that up because
you're not needed.
I'm not needed at home as much.
So if you could go and talk to an entrepreneur that's maybe looking to sell their business, either to a partner or not to a partner, but they're just looking to sell their business 3 to 5 years from now, what's one or two bits of advice that you would give them?
Well, probably the first thing I would say is I talk to the people that aren't looking to sell their business, because that 3 to 5 year sneaks up on you. You don't. I didn't sit here and think 3 years ago I'm going to sell my business in 3 years. I thought that came up a year ago. The discussion started happening on that, and then even in my case, I already knew the buyer, I knew exactly who I was going to sell to, and the process still took 8 months to do. So, and we already had our numbers in a form that worked. Mm-hmm. So one, I would say that if you're looking to sell, it's going to take a lot longer than you think. And I've seen this in several cases with other friends of mine that have sold their businesses. It always seems to take longer than what everyone thinks it's going to do. I mean, every now and then you hear about the guy that
sold in 2 weeks.
Yes, and it's usually to a much larger cash company that has no banks involved and stuff
right.
like that.
I can write a check and
yes,
and we don't want you. We're good. So goodbye.
Exactly. But I would say that go ahead and start the process of getting a valuation done on your company. There are some cheaper ways to do this. The quickest, the easiest way is to get key man insurance on yourself and for the company's sake. And your insurance company will do a type of valuation. Now it'll be a pure cash valuation.
So that's like your bottom.
That's your very bottom.
That's the starting point.
That's your starting point. But at least it gives you a mindset of what your company is worth. And then there's usually some type of market. You can talk to people in your industry and find out what your multiplier is and get some type of idea. I guarantee you it's going to be smaller than what you think. But that would be, I'd go ahead and get that done immediately, even if you're not thinking about selling. Mm-hmm. So you have some idea.
Just to put to frame the thoughts?
To frame the thoughts. And then if that number isn't what you want it to be, go to someone in M&A. There are a couple companies out there that help businesses, especially if you come in at the 3 to 5 year mark before you want to sell, and they get you to reorganize your business and reset up your accounts and everything into a format that make it easier to sell.
Gotcha.
Remember, like I said, all of our numbers were already in that format, and it still took us 8 months to sell, and I already knew who my buyer was. Mm-hmm. So if you're hunting for a buyer, and then they do their due diligence on it, and all that, how quickly they can do their due diligence and how easily they can do it will make a big difference in how much you're going to get. Because if they have to start digging into every little thing in your books, they look even closer.
Yeah.
So if your numbers are all in order and it makes it real easy for them, then they're not going to dive as deep into the nitpicky stuff and maybe lose a lot of value.
Lose value. And that's exactly what we've heard. This is such a unique time. You kind of date each other and you're like, you look nice, and so you start to date, and then you get into a really big fight, and then at the end you're married.
Yes.
So that's really, really weird. But to be able to have that transparency of, okay, I don't necessarily want to think about exiting my business in 3 to 5 years, but I need to start framing my mindset that this can happen, and this is going to happen.
It's eventually every one of us is going to exit our business one way or another.
One way or another.
And at least getting, like I said, get a key man insurance policy on yourself, because if something happens to you, the company's got to replace you. And if you get that with a good insurance company, they're going to do a basic valuation on your company for free, just to make sure that they're giving you the right amount of insurance.
Coverage. That's right.
So that would be the first thing I would suggest people to do, just to get a mindset of where they're at. And if you don't like that number, that means that you probably need to talk to some type of consultant that will help you increase your
get to that.
Yeah, get your numbers to where, and form them the way you need to make it worth what you want.
So, well, Stephen, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, for taking time. This is literally fresh on your brain as we were going through this. You having gone through the sale transaction just recently. I want to make sure that we thank everybody that is listening and is watching us. I will say that the opinions that Steve and I talked about, these are our opinions, not your past, present, or future business, my current employer, or any affiliates or anything like that. That is completely ours. But Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. And if there's an entrepreneur out there that is looking to sell their business or wants to pick your brain a little bit more, how can they get in touch with you?
Probably the easiest way would be to email me at, right now, I would just give out Stephen@thesuttonhouse.com. That's my personal email address. So if anyone does have any questions, they can reach out to me that way, and I will help them as best I can.
Thanks so much, and we really appreciate you. And again, thank you so much for watching and for being part of the series. Until next time, take care.
Thank you.
See what I mean? Steven is the definition of an entrepreneur. I can't wait for his rest time the next couple of months to be over with so that we can find out what he's going to do next. I enjoy so much working with him, and I do enjoy so much talking with him and just learning from him. The top 3 things that I took away from my conversation with Steven was, 1, always be flexible. And as an entrepreneur, you realize that you have to be flexible in a lot of different ways, whether that be operationally, financially, whatever it is. But have you ever thought about flexibility in your exit? You know, when Steven talked about how he thought the exit was when he brought his partner on years ago, he thought that they would just both grow together and then they would exit together and then that would be it. But he was flexible in his plans and kind of what was going on in his life, and the manner in which he exited changed. 2, make sure that you've got your books in order. And he said that it was a long process, and it was a long process even though he knew who he was going to sell to, and they knew the number. So they'd already agreed to all that, and they had their books in order. But having your books in order to be able to go to a prospective buyer and just be like, okay, here's the financial side of my business, here's the operational side of the business, and you've got all your records and everything lined up, it just makes things a lot easier. And then 3, to understand what is important to you, the entrepreneur. And this was maybe a little bit more subtle, but in the conversation, we talked about it and we discussed a little bit how Steven is really, really passionate, and he's really, really, really good at taking a blank piece of paper and thinking through an idea and then bringing that idea to life and then kind of growing it. But he's also knows himself enough that he says that once it gets to a certain point, then he starts to lose interest. It's not what he is passionate about. He can do operational stuff, but it's not the thing that really gets him excited. So you have to understand yourself, and you have to know what you are after and how that might change kind of throughout the time. Well, I hope that you have been enjoying this series. I hope that you join us next week when we talk with a great friend of mine, Nathan Green. Nathan is the CEO and principal at Spirit Advisors, and he is that's a boutique M&A firm. And I know that we've had one M&A broker on earlier, Nathan Tyner, but I thought you'd like to hear from another Nathan, who's also an M&A broker, Nathan Green, and just kind of have a different perspective, because being a broker is one of the key members of a deal team that you may want to consider. So hope that you join us next week when we talk with Nathan. If you have any questions or feedback, I'd love to have that. If we're not connected on LinkedIn or Facebook, I would love to connect with you there as well. Until then, this is Greg Martin, the Entrepreneur's Banker, wishing you have a wonderful week.